What do you see? I mean, your firm is like heavy into litigation, like some hardcore litigation. I said, Kurzman himself has been going to, Ira's been going to, Supreme Court and stuff. What are the type of litigation cases that you're putting forward right now that's, kind of in the news or just worthy to talk about?
I guess really you can divide it into two types of cases. One, just kind of your cases we've been doing for years where we feel we need to challenge a denial of a type of visa or status. And that's not so systemic. And then you have these systemic just delays in processing of any kind of immigration benefit, whether it's an advanced parole or a work permit, TPS status, that have gotten gradually worse, I'd say, during the previous administration, but it has not gotten better. It's gotten worse since the pandemic. And I think even the current administration, which is, I consider immigrant friendly, is struggling with how to cope with just the huge backlog of cases. But I think a lot of times some of these delays are just inexcusable. We are going to be mounting a lawsuit challenging delays in TPS status and TPS EADs. That's probably the next case we're going to be bringing in terms of, impact litigation, as opposed to a lawsuit just on behalf of a particular individual client. But I go ahead.
No. One of the lawsuits, like, we don't do litigation, and I really need to develop it because there's so much business, is the delays at the embassy for adjudications. Like daily, you get asked, and it's hard to pile up a class action for these. So it's kind of like one-on-one hits on these lawsuits. And usually I see it works. I mean, all of a sudden the embassy just says, here's your appointment date. And like, okay, it's like a extra filing fee you have to do it. So it makes it where like the rich people could get better access because they could pay the filing fee, which is a lawyer in a lawsuit, just to get an embassy appointment. But it's just such a nasty thing. I'm sure you guys have to do a lot of those cases.
It is. And a lot of clients are, very wary of taking on the U.S. government. And some clients are concerned that there's going to be some sort of backlash. The government's going to vindictively deny the visa. And I don't think that would happen. But I do believe that in many cases they are fighting, at least USCIS is fighting some cases that maybe a few years ago they wouldn't have litigated. They're just trying to slow it down, fighting over venue. Moving to dismiss instead of filing an answer. So you never know. But many times, yes, you do get, a positive effect as soon as you file a lawsuit, or shortly after you do get a mysterious resolution of your case, whether it's an interview being scheduled, if you're suing a consular post, as or USCIS reopening a denial. So it can be an effective tool. And sometimes it's the only tool we've got.
But you made an important point. There have been changes where they're kind of fighting it a little bit, and they're dragging their feet. Some of the judges aren't. Like, I've heard judges in DC aren't playing ball. Like they're just like they're canceling these. So it's like which venue you choose. The USCIS is pushing back on this kind of stuff. Like there's an exponential rise in the federal litigation that's happening. Instead of fixing the system, though, they're just fighting. It's like what?
Exactly. And then sometimes, it looks like maybe they're getting their hands around something. I remember maybe a month or two ago, they announced they were decoupling EADs and advanced paroles, and somehow that was going to fix the problem. And I know from speaking to colleagues that, maybe a couple of EADs were issued super quick. And then nothing, we're back to where we were.
Yeah, November, December, January, I was getting EADs done in like 6 weeks. I'm like, oh, they finally fixed it. And then everything is back to 8-9 months. Right. It had told clients we're getting this fast and they're not getting it. They're like, you lied to me. USCI said by September, October, they're going to get cases done in 6 months. I-130s, that didn't happen. I've K1s going 13, 14 months. I-129Fs that are still pending.
No, I know. And I'm not sure why. I mean, I know there are multiple reasons, the pandemic, and there was a lot of attrition during the previous administration, and, obviously just a huge backlog in cases. But I just feel like somebody out there at the agency needs to try to be a little creative and come up with ways to resolve some of these issues. I'm sure there are ways that you don't have to spend, I don't know how many hours you spend on an I-765, but is it it's not the ultimate benefit. It's just a work permit.
Yeah.
I mean, why is it so hard to approve an I-485? I mean, excuse me, an I-765, but why is that? I don't get it. And, we all know clients who've lost jobs, like H-4 spouses. I don't know how many have spoken to lost jobs because they couldn't get the work permit before. I mean, even now they can't really work incident status, unlike E2s and Ls.
And it took a litigation to get that, which there should have been all history that you should have had incident status. In H4, so it's like you got to fight them on every little piece for basic stuff. That shouldn't even be an issue.
No, I know. It's depressing sometimes, and to have to explain that to a client, it's frustrating because there aren't that many mechanisms. Again, not everyone, only the minority of people or of clients is going to be interested in litigating. Something. And I've tried congressional liaison, but I think most senators and congressmen's offices are overwhelmed with these requests too.
They've given up to an extent. Some of them are better than others, but I had one senator in Texas send me a letter saying, we're not doing agency work for clients who have lawyers. Go contact AILA. I'm like, what? What kind of response is that? And so they sent it by mail too. I think they intentionally just sent it by email, so I can't respond directly. Like, what are you talking about? But then we went to a local congressperson, and actually, after many expedite requests for an Iowa authority, we got it approved. I have to ask them 3 or 4 times, and then finally for it to happen.
Right.